Mira slowly opened her eyes. The first thing she noticed was the strange, bright light above her. Her head throbbed and she felt a heaviness in her body, as if she had been asleep for a very long time. She tried to move, but every muscle felt stiff. As her vision cleared, she realized she was lying in a large, empty chamber. The walls were smooth and metallic, with panels that glowed faintly. There was a quiet hum in the air, but otherwise it was completely silent. Mira sat up, confusion and fear mixing in her mind. "Where am I?" she whispered. She tried to remember what had happened before waking up, but her memories were like fragments of a broken mirror. She recalled a small house, a warm bed, and a feeling of safety. And then, nothing. The door to the chamber slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a world that looked like nothing she had ever known. Mira stepped out cautiously. The first thing she noticed was the air. It was thick and dry, carrying the scent of dust and old metal. The sky was pale, almost white, and the sun hung low, casting long, uneven shadows over the ruins of what appeared to be a city. Buildings towered around her, but they were broken, crumbling, and silent. Windows were shattered and doors hung loosely on their hinges. Streets that were once full of life now lay covered in layers of dust, cracked asphalt, and debris. Mira's heart pounded in her chest. She had never felt such emptiness before. She walked slowly, her footsteps echoing through the empty streets. Every corner, every alley, seemed to tell a story of sudden abandonment. Abandoned vehicles, their tires flat and metal rusted, were scattered across the roads. Shops were open, their shelves empty, and papers fluttered in the wind like frozen memories. Mira reached out and touched one of the torn posters on a wall. It showed a smiling family, their faces bright and happy, and words she could barely read, "Together forever." The sight made her chest ache. Was this world really like this? She murmured. Hours passed as Mira explored. She tried to find any signs of life, but there was none. Not a single bird, not a single animal, not even the sound of a distant river or wind in the trees. It was as if the world had been frozen in time, and she had woken up centuries too late. As she wandered, Mira discovered a library. Its massive doors were hanging from broken hinges, and the windows were dusty and cracked. Inside, rows of bookshelves stood like silent witnesses to the past. Many books had fallen to the floor, their pages yellowed and fragile. Mira picked up one of the books carefully. It was a record of ordinary life, children playing, people working, celebrations, festivals, and daily routines. She flipped through the pages, trying to absorb the images. She felt a lump in her throat. The people in these books were gone. All of them. Mira left the library, carrying a few books with her. The sky began to darken, the pale sun dipping closer to the horizon. She climbed a small hill near the edge of the city and looked out over the vast expanse of ruins. From this height, the full scale of the emptiness hit her. Streets stretched like veins across a body without life. Bridges collapsed into rivers that were dry. Parks that once held laughter now held only weeds and cracked benches. She sank to the ground, hugging her knees. "Where is everyone?" she whispered to herself, but the silence answered nothing. Mira closed her eyes, trying to calm her racing thoughts. She had so many questions. How had she survived? How had the world ended? And most importantly, why had she been left alone? Night fell and the cold touched her skin. Mira found an abandoned building with a roof intact enough to shelter her. She made a small fire using pieces of wood and paper she found, careful not to attract any attention from the unknown. The flames gave her warmth, but also a strange sense of comfort. In that moment, Mira realized something important. She could not stay still. She had to move, explore, and try to understand what had happened. Sleep was impossible that night. She sat by the fire thinking about what she had seen. The emptiness was not just around her. It was everywhere. The thought that every human being had vanished made her heart ache with a weight she had never known. She wondered if she had been dreaming all this, but the cold, dusty air and the broken buildings told her it was real. At dawn, Mira began walking again. She chose a path that led away from the city, toward the outskirts. The streets here were worse, covered in rubble and cracked concrete. Mira had to step carefully, avoiding sharp metal and broken glass. As she walked, she noticed faint tracks in the dust, animal tracks perhaps, or something else. Her curiosity grew, mixed with fear. She had no idea what she might find. After hours of walking, she found a small river. Its water was dirty and shallow, but it was moving. Mira knelt and drank, her throat dry from the long journey. She splashed some water on her face and noticed her reflection. Her eyes looked tired, her hair dusty and tangled. But in that reflection, she also saw determination. She was alive, and alive meant she had a purpose. Continuing along the river, Mira found signs of strange structures in the distance. They looked like towers, tall and moving slowly across the landscape. She had never seen machines like these before. They were huge, made of metal and glass, and they glowed faintly in the sunlight. Mira hid behind a broken wall and watched them. Her heart pounded with a mix of fear and curiosity. Were they dangerous? Or were they alive like her? She decided to follow them from a distance. The machines moved with purpose, scanning the land as if searching for something. Mira kept low, careful not to be seen. Hours passed and the sun climbed high in the sky. Mira's stomach growled, reminding her that she needed food. She found some abandoned stores along the way, but most were empty. Some had old cans or boxes, but they were spoiled or rusted. Mira learned quickly that survival meant careful searching and patience. By evening, she reached another small hill. She climbed to the top and looked down at the machines. They were like giants moving through the empty world, quiet and deliberate. Mira's fear was strong, but so was her curiosity. She had to know what these machines were and why they existed in a world without humans. That night, she slept under a broken shelter, listening to the wind whistle through the ruined buildings. Mira dreamed of voices she had never heard, of laughter and music, and of people she had never met. She woke with a start, realizing the dream had left her feeling both lonely and inspired. Even in a world where humanity was gone, she felt a spark of hope. Mira understood one thing clearly. She was alone, yes, but she was not powerless. The machines, the ruins, the books, and the memories of humanity were all around her. They held secrets and stories waiting to be discovered, and Mira was ready to uncover them. As she lay awake, staring at the pale light of the moon reflecting on the broken streets, she whispered to herself, "I will find the truth. I will not let humanity's story disappear. I will wake the world from its silence." With that thought, Mira closed her eyes, letting exhaustion take her for a few hours of sleep, preparing herself for the journey that lay ahead. She did not know what dangers awaited or what mysteries she would uncover, but she knew that her life, and perhaps the life of the world, depended on what she did next. The ruins were silent. The machines moved in the distance, and Mira was awake. A new chapter of the world's story was beginning, and she would be at the center of it. The next morning, Mira woke with a stiff neck and sore muscles, but a determined feeling pushed her to move forward. The ruined city lay silent behind her, bathed in the soft light of dawn. She adjusted the small pack she had made from scraps she found in abandoned buildings. Inside were a few old books, some water she had collected, and a small amount of food, mostly dried fruits and a few cans she had salvaged. Mira looked toward the machines she had seen yesterday. They were far away now, moving slowly over the cracked land. She decided to follow them. Somehow she felt that they held answers. If humanity had vanished, perhaps these machines had witnessed it, or maybe they knew why it had happened. Mira did not know if the machines were dangerous, but curiosity outweighed fear. She took a deep breath and began her journey. The streets outside the city were even worse than she expected. Cracked roads, fallen streetlights, and broken signs littered the ground. She stepped carefully to avoid sharp metal, glass, and fallen concrete. Every step reminded her how fragile life could be. Mira thought of the people she had seen in books and posters, the smiling faces, families, celebrations, and felt a pang of sorrow. Where had they gone? Why was she the only one left? As she walked, Mira noticed small signs of life. A bird flew overhead, its wings flapping slowly. In the distance, she saw a few plants struggling through cracks in the pavement. These tiny signs brought her hope. Life, even in small amounts, could survive. And if life survived, perhaps humanity could be reborn. Mira walked for hours, careful to stay in the shadows when the sun grew too bright. The land was harsh and unforgiving. Old factories and warehouses lined the way. Their roofs collapsed and their walls riddled with cracks. She moved cautiously, keeping an eye on the horizon. The machines were always somewhere ahead, like silent guardians moving through the empty world. Around midday, Mira stopped near a dry creek to rest and drink water from a small puddle. She had to filter the water with cloth from her pack to make it safer, but it was the only source nearby. While resting, she noticed faint tracks in the dust. They were not human, too large and spaced far apart, but they suggested movement. Mira felt a mix of fear and curiosity. Something else existed in this empty world, and she had to know what it was. After a short break, she continued walking. The sun climbed high, burning through the thin clouds above. Mira's throat was dry and her stomach growled, but she pushed on. The machines ahead grew more distinct as the day passed. Their metal bodies glinted in the sunlight, and faint lights pulsed from their tops. Mira wondered what powered them. Electricity? Solar energy? Or something far older than humanity had understood? As evening approached, Mira reached the edge of a forest. Trees were twisted and broken, but some had survived. She moved carefully through the underbrush, her eyes never leaving the machines in the distance. The forest offered shade and some protection from the wind, but it was also full of hidden dangers. Mira had to step over fallen branches, avoid sharp rocks, and listen for any sounds that might indicate a threat. Suddenly, she heard a sound, a low hum, different from the wind. Mira froze. The sound was mechanical but rhythmic, like a heartbeat. She crouched behind a tree and watched as a smaller machine emerged from the forest. It moved differently than the larger tower she had seen. Its arms extended and retracted, and it seemed to scan the ground carefully. Mira realized that these machines were not mindless. They were searching, observing, and perhaps even learning. Her heart raced. Could these machines understand her? Could they communicate? Mira wanted to test her theory, but feared being discovered. She stayed hidden, watching as the small machine moved back toward the larger ones in the distance. Mira took careful notes in her mind. Every movement, every sound, every light could be important. She had to learn about these machines if she wanted to survive. Night fell slowly, bringing with it a cold that seeped into Mira's bones. She found an old shed near the forest's edge, its walls mostly intact. She gathered fallen branches and built a small fire, using what she had learned from old survival books. The fire offered warmth and a small sense of safety, but Mira knew that the night was long and the world around her was still full of mysteries. As she sat by the fire, Mira reflected on her situation. She had been alone for 2 days now. No human voice, no sound of laughter, no friendly face had crossed her path. The thought was terrifying, but she also felt a strange clarity. She understood that survival required not only strength but also patience, observation, and courage. The machines, the ruins, and the memories of the past would guide her if she paid attention. Mira spent hours planning her next day. She decided to follow the machines even closer, but always with caution. She would avoid direct contact until she understood them better. Maybe they held the knowledge of what had happened to humanity. Maybe they were the key to her survival. Maybe they could help her rebuild what had been lost. Sleep came slowly that night. Mira dreamed of voices, soft, distant whispers of people laughing, crying, and singing. She saw faces she did not know but somehow felt connected to. She woke with tears on her cheeks, the fire's glow reflecting in her eyes. These dreams, she realized, were reminders that life and humanity had once existed. And even if the world was silent now, their memory was alive in her. Morning arrived with a pale sun. Mira packed her few belongings and stepped out of the shed. The forest was quiet except for occasional bird calls. She followed the path the machines had taken, careful to move slowly and quietly. The terrain was uneven, with fallen trees, cracked rocks, and hidden holes. Mira had to watch every step. Around noon, she came to a river that flowed more strongly than the one she had crossed earlier. The water was clearer, though still cold. Mira drank and filled her container, feeling refreshed. She noticed strange patterns in the sand along the riverbank, tracks made by both animals and the machines. The machines were not only moving forward, they were marking the land in some way. Mira wondered why. Were they mapping the world? Recording it? Preserving it? She followed the river, moving closer to the machine's trail. Hours passed and the machines became clearer. One of the smaller ones stopped near a broken bridge. Its sensors scanned the river, and its lights pulsed in a regular rhythm. Mira hid behind a rock, her heart racing. She had never felt so small, so human, and yet so alive. By evening, Mira reached a hill that overlooked a wide valley. The machines moved slowly below, their shapes casting long shadows in the fading light. Mira sat on the hill, exhausted but filled with wonder. She realized the machines were more than just metal. They carried memory, purpose, and perhaps even understanding. Mira felt a growing determination. She had to learn from them, survive with them, and maybe even find answers to the disappearance of humanity. Night fell again, colder than the first. Mira built a small shelter using branches and old cloth. She cooked a small meal with what remained in her pack, eating slowly while thinking about the day. She had survived, learned, and observed, but the questions in her mind were heavier than her hunger. How had humans vanished? Were there others like her, asleep or hiding? And what exactly were these machines? As she lay down to sleep, Mira gazed at the stars. They were brighter than she remembered, unpolluted by city lights, clear and distant. She whispered into the night, "I will find the truth. I will not let this world be forgotten." The valley below was silent except for the slow, deliberate movements of the machines. Mira felt a mix of fear and hope. She was alone, yes, but she was alive. And as long as she lived, the story of humanity could continue. With that thought, Mira closed her eyes, letting herself rest for the first time in 2 days. The machines continued their journey, and Mira's journey was just beginning. She had no idea what dangers or discoveries awaited her, but she knew one thing. She would not stop until she understood the world she had awoken to. Mira woke to the soft glow of dawn spilling over the valley. The machines she had followed for days were now clearer than ever, moving slowly and deliberately across the land. Their metal surfaces reflected the first light of the sun, and soft pulses of light traveled along their frames like the beat of a giant heart. Mira felt both fear and awe. These machines were unlike anything she had ever seen. They were alive in a way she could not fully understand. She adjusted her small pack, checking her supplies. Food and water were low, but her determination was stronger than ever. Today she would follow the machines closer than she had before. She moved carefully, keeping to the shadows of broken walls and fallen trees, watching their movements. Every gesture, every light pulse seemed purposeful. Mira felt that they were guiding her, or at least showing her something she was meant to see. By mid-morning, she reached the edge of a large clearing. The machines had stopped, forming a circle around a raised platform in the center. Mira crouched behind a pile of rubble and watched. From the platform, a holographic light shot upward, projecting images that hovered in the air. Mira's eyes widened. She could see humans, faces, hands, clothing, and expressions, all moving and speaking as if frozen in time. Families laughed, children played, markets bustled, and cities thrived. Mira stepped closer, her heart racing. The holograms were vivid, almost real. It was as if the machines were showing her what life had been like before the world became silent. She reached out her hand toward one of the images, and to her surprise, the hologram responded slightly, shimmering where her fingers brushed it. A soft mechanical voice filled the clearing. Memory preserved. Purpose continued. Mira's mind reeled. These machines were not just metal. They were keepers of memory. They had survived long after humanity had vanished, preserving the world as it once was. She felt a lump in her throat. All the people she had seen in books, all the faces in the photographs and posters, were remembered here by these machines. The past was alive, even if the present was silent. She explored the perimeter of the circle, noticing that the machines were not identical. Some were tall and tower-like, projecting the holograms, while smaller ones moved along the ground, scanning objects, analyzing soil, and observing the landscape. Mira realized that each machine had a role. Some preserved history, some monitored the environment, and some searched for signs of life. Her curiosity grew. Mira moved closer to one of the smaller machines. Its sensors turned toward her, scanning her carefully. Lights flashed across its body, and a soft hum filled the air. Mira froze, unsure whether to run or stay, but the machine did not attack. Instead, it adjusted its sensors and continued its work. Mira exhaled slowly. The machines were not hostile, they were observers. She watched the holograms for hours. Each one told a story. Families celebrating festivals, people building cities, children learning and playing, markets full of food and colors. Mira felt a strange connection to these images, as if the memories themselves were speaking to her. She began to understand the full scale of what had been lost. Humanity had once been vibrant, full of creativity and love, and now all that remained were memories recorded in metal and light. As the day passed, Mira explored further. She noticed smaller holograms projected on the ground, showing details of human life: books, tools, vehicles, instruments, and even plants. She walked through them carefully, feeling as if she were walking through the past itself. The machines seemed to respond to her presence, their lights pulsing softly in recognition. Mira realized that they were aware of her, that she was not just a passive observer. Suddenly, one of the taller machines rotated, projecting a new hologram. This one showed disasters. Fires spreading across cities, floods sweeping streets, storms tearing through landscapes, and people struggling to survive. Mira felt a chill run down her spine. Humanity had not vanished quietly. It had fought against forces it could not control. The machines were showing her the mistakes, the consequences, and the final moments of human civilization. Mira knelt, tears forming in her eyes. She had survived, but all these people, this world, was gone. And yet here it was preserved. The machines had remembered everything. Mira whispered to herself, "I can learn from this. I can understand what happened." She knew she had to study these records carefully. If she wanted to survive and maybe rebuild, she needed to learn from both the achievements and the mistakes of humanity. As evening approached, Mira noticed one of the smaller machines moving toward her. Her heart pounded. The machine stopped a few feet away, its sensors focusing on her. Then a soft voice spoke. Evaluation. Human detected. Survival probability unknown. Mira held her breath, unsure what to do. After a few moments, the machine's lights shifted to a calm, steady glow. It did not attack or move aggressively. Instead, it projected a holographic map of the surrounding area. Mira studied it carefully. The map showed forests, rivers, ruins, and even her own path. She realized the machine was offering guidance. It was showing her the environment, perhaps to help her survive. Mira took a deep breath and stepped closer. I am Mira," she said softly, unsure if the machine could understand her. The lights on its sensors pulsed in response. Then it projected a series of images: food sources, clean water, safe shelter, and plants that could be grown. Mira's eyes widened. The machines were teaching her. They were not just observers, they were guides helping the last human learn to survive in this empty world. Night fell, bringing a chill. Mira found a small building nearby to shelter in. She carried some of the books she had salvaged from the city and studied them by the faint glow of a fire. The images of humanity she had seen earlier stayed in her mind. She could feel the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. She was not only alone, but she was also a witness, a keeper of memory. She had to understand, remember, and perhaps protect the knowledge that the machines had preserved. Sleep came slowly, and Mira dreamed of voices, laughter, and sunlight. She saw humans moving through the streets, playing with children and sharing meals. She woke with a start, the images still vivid in her mind. She understood something crucial. These machines had preserved life in a way that humans could not. And now she was part of their purpose. The next morning, Mira returned to the circle of machines. She spent hours observing them, learning their patterns and functions. The smaller machines collected samples of soil and water, while the larger ones projected memories. Mira realized that the machines had not only preserved the past, but were also monitoring the environment to ensure that life, if it returned, could survive. Mira began to move carefully among the smaller machines, studying their behavior. She learned that each movement, each pulse of light had meaning. The machines were alive in a way she could understand, through purpose and memory. They were not sentient like humans, but they had knowledge, awareness, and patience. By evening, Mira felt a sense of purpose she had never known. She was no longer just a survivor wandering through ruins. She was a learner, a witness, and perhaps one day a teacher. The machines had shown her the past, the mistakes of humanity, and the tools for survival. Now it was her turn to act, to carry the knowledge forward and to make choices that could shape the future. As she lay down to sleep that night, Mira looked at the glowing machines in the distance. They were silent, patient, and endlessly watchful. She whispered to herself, "I will learn from you. I will understand the past, and I will not let it be forgotten." The night was quiet, but Mira felt less alone. She had the machines, the memories, and her determination. Together they held the key to survival. Mira drifted into a deep sleep, ready to face the next day. Tomorrow she would explore further, learn more from the machines, and uncover the hidden secrets of a world that had vanished from sight, but not from memory. For the first time since awakening, Mira felt hope. Humanity may have disappeared, but its spirit, captured by these machines, lived on. And Mira was determined to keep that spirit alive. Mira woke to the soft hum of the machines nearby. The glow of their lights painted the valley in shades of silver and blue. She had spent days observing and learning from them, but a stronger curiosity had grown inside her. There was more to discover, something important hidden beneath the ruins and the memories. She knew that to understand why humanity had disappeared, she had to explore deeper. Following the smaller machines, Mira ventured into a part of the valley she had not yet seen. The terrain became rougher, with sharp rocks and fallen structures from long-forgotten buildings. The machines moved purposefully, leading her to a large structure partially buried in earth and dust. Its entrance was wide, reinforced with metal, but the doors were cracked and hanging loosely. Mira approached cautiously, the hum of the machines echoing in her ears. Inside, the air was cooler, carrying a faint smell of old metal and machinery. The walls were lined with panels, many of which were still functioning. Mira ran her hands along them, brushing away dust and debris. Symbols glowed softly and screens flickered to life as she touched them. She realized this place was an archive, a hidden repository of human knowledge preserved by the machines. The archive contained records of cities, governments, and families. Mira moved through the rows of glowing panels, seeing images of people at work, at play, and in moments of great emotion. Some images were joyful, showing celebrations and friendships. Others were tragic, showing wars, natural disasters, and struggles for survival. Mira felt her chest tighten. These images told the story of humanity, not just its achievements, but its mistakes and ultimately its downfall. She paused before a large screen. It projected a series of events from the final decades of human civilization. Mira watched as cities became overcrowded, natural resources were used up, and conflicts spread across nations. Disasters struck, both natural and human-made, and people struggled to survive. Slowly, the scenes showed governments collapsing, families being separated, and entire communities vanishing. Mira's heart ached as she realized the truth. Humanity had not vanished by a single event, but through a series of mistakes, struggles, and disasters that no one could fully control. As she explored further, Mira discovered recordings of scientists, engineers, and leaders trying to find solutions. They worked tirelessly to prevent destruction, but the problems were too large. Food shortages, climate changes, and diseases overwhelmed them. Mira realized that humanity had fought to survive until the very end, but the world had changed faster than people could adapt. Then she came across another series of panels. These were different. They focused on her. Images of a chamber, the moment she had been put to sleep, and the machine's decision to preserve her were displayed. Mira's eyes widened. She had been chosen by the machines, the last human alive, to continue the story. She understood now. She was not just a survivor by chance. The machines had found her dormant body and awakened her when the world was ready for her to take the next step. Mira felt a mixture of fear and responsibility. She was alone, yes, but she carried the weight of all humanity's knowledge. The decisions she made now could shape the future. If she survived, she could rebuild, learn from past mistakes, and perhaps ensure that life would thrive again. If she failed, the world might remain empty forever. The machines, she realized, were more than memory keepers. They were teachers and guides. They preserved the knowledge of farming, medicine, construction, and technology. They had recorded centuries of human innovation, waiting for someone to continue what had been lost. Mira felt hope ignite within her. Even if humanity had vanished, life itself could continue through her and the guidance of the machines. Mira spent days in the archive, studying the panels and recordings. She learned how to purify water, plant crops, and repair simple machinery. She discovered books stored digitally within the machine's memory, books on history, science, philosophy, and art. Every lesson was a gift, a tool to rebuild. Mira realized that she could not rush. Survival required patience, careful planning, and understanding. One afternoon, Mira discovered a section of the archive dedicated to environmental monitoring. The machines had been observing the planet, tracking weather, soil quality, water levels, and plant growth. They had learned how to sustain ecosystems, even in a world that humans had nearly destroyed. Mira marveled at the intelligence and care built into these machines. They had not only preserved humanity's past, but had also prepared the world for life to return. As she studied, Mira noticed a small panel she had not seen before. It projected a map of the planet, showing areas that were safe for settlement, fertile lands, and water sources. Mira realized the machines were offering her a guide to rebuilding. She could start small, planting crops, restoring clean water, and eventually creating a community of life. The knowledge was there. She only had to act. That night, Mira set up her small camp near the archive. She ate her meager meal, her mind full of plans and possibilities. For the first time since waking, she felt a sense of direction. She was not wandering aimlessly anymore. She had a mission: to preserve humanity's memory, learn from the past, and rebuild life on Earth. Sleep came slowly. Mira dreamed of the people she had seen in the archive: families, children, friends. She imagined herself teaching them, learning with them, and creating a new beginning. She woke with determination, knowing that even though the world had ended for humanity, it could still begin again. Over the next several days, Mira worked tirelessly. She explored the surrounding area, marking locations of fresh water, fertile soil, and plant life. She studied the machines, observing how they functioned and learning to predict their patterns. She discovered small robots designed to maintain and repair equipment. By working alongside them, she learned to fix broken tools and even create simple devices. Every day brought new lessons, new skills, and a deeper understanding of the world she now inhabited. Mira realized something profound. The machines were not just tools. They were caretakers. They had been watching over the planet, preserving memory and knowledge, preparing the world for someone like her. And now that she was awake, they were ready to teach, guide, and protect her. She felt gratitude and awe. Though she was alone, she was not powerless. She had allies in the machines, knowledge in the archives, and the will to survive. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the horizon, Mira looked over the ruins from a small hill. The valley below shimmered in the last light, the machines moving silently, carrying the weight of memory and purpose. Mira whispered to herself, "I will not let this world be forgotten. I will rebuild. I will honor the past and create a future." She understood that her task was greater than survival. She was the bridge between the past and the future. Humanity's story had ended, but she could continue it. The lessons of mistakes, the knowledge of achievements, and the guidance of the machines gave her a unique chance to start again. She knew it would not be easy, but Mira felt ready. The night was quiet, and Mira lay under the stars, thinking about what she had learned. She imagined planting the first seeds, creating shelter, and eventually seeing life return to the barren lands. She imagined children playing, laughter filling the air, and humans returning to a world they had once lost. It was a vision that filled her heart with hope and purpose. Mira drifted into sleep, dreaming of the future she could build. The machines hummed softly around her, guardians of memory, watchers of life, and teachers of knowledge. She realized that though humanity had vanished, its spirit lived on through her and through the machines, and she knew, deep within her heart, that she would carry that spirit forward, carefully, patiently, and wisely. Tomorrow, Mira decided, she would begin the work of rebuilding. She would plant the first crops, purify the water, and lay the foundations for life to return. The secret of the past had been revealed, and now it was her turn to shape the future. She was ready. The machines glowed softly in the night. The archive preserved every memory, and Mira, the last human, slept with a sense of hope and responsibility. The world was empty, yes, but it was not silent. Life, memory, and knowledge remained, waiting for her to awaken the world once more. Mira woke to a soft golden light spilling across the valley. The machines she had come to trust moved gently around her, monitoring the land and keeping watch over the world that had survived in dust and memory. Today was different. Today, she would not just explore or observe. Today, she would begin to rebuild. The lessons she had learned in the archive, the guidance of the machines, and her own determination had prepared her for this moment. She gathered her supplies and stepped carefully across the valley floor. Her first task was simple but crucial: to plant crops in a patch of fertile soil the machines had identified. Mira knelt, digging small holes with a piece of broken metal she had sharpened, and placed seeds carefully into the earth. She watered them with water she had purified using the knowledge stored in the machine's archives. Each seed felt like a promise, a tiny spark of life ready to grow in a world that had been silent for too long. As she worked, Mira looked around at the valley. The ruins of the old world stood as reminders of what had been lost, but the small green shoots emerging from the soil brought hope. The machines moved among the plants, scanning and nurturing them in their own way. Mira realized that they were not just helping her. They were teaching her how to care for the land just as humanity had once done. By midday, she had planted several small patches of crops. Mira paused to rest, sitting on a rock and observing the valley. Birds had begun to return, curious about the small signs of life. The sound of their wings and calls brought warmth to her heart. For the first time, Mira felt a deep sense of connection to the world around her. She was no longer merely surviving, she was creating life. The afternoon passed with more work. Mira built simple shelters using materials from the ruins: metal sheets, wood, and scraps of cloth. The machines assisted, moving pieces into place and stabilizing structures that might otherwise have fallen. Mira marveled at their precision and patience. These machines were not alive in the way humans were, but they had a purpose and intelligence that surpassed anything she had known. Together, they were forming the beginnings of a new world. As evening approached, Mira stood on a small hill overlooking the valley. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the land. She could see the patches of green she had planted, the structures she had built, and the machines moving steadily among them. Mira felt a sense of pride and hope she had never imagined possible. The world had been destroyed, yes, but it could be reborn. Life could return. Humanity's story, though paused, could continue. That night, Mira ate a small meal and prepared for sleep. She sat quietly, watching the machines glow softly in the darkness. She reflected on everything she had learned: the mistakes of humanity, the knowledge preserved by the machines, and the skills she had gained through observation and practice. She understood now that rebuilding was not just about survival. It was about wisdom, patience, and care. Every step mattered, and every decision could shape the future. Mira's dreams that night were filled with life. She saw children playing in the sunlight, families laughing together, and communities thriving in harmony with nature. She dreamed of rivers flowing clean and full, of forests growing tall and strong, and of animals returning to their homes. The dreams filled her with hope and determination. She woke with a clear mind and a heart ready to continue her work. The days that followed were filled with careful planning and steady effort. Mira expanded the areas she had planted, experimenting with different crops and planting techniques. She studied the patterns of the machines, learning how they helped the environment and how she could mimic their methods. Slowly, life began to return to the valley. Small plants sprouted, birds nested in the ruins, and insects returned to pollinate the growing crops. Mira also began to explore further, seeking additional water sources, fertile soil, and areas where more life could thrive. Each discovery brought new possibilities. She marked safe locations on maps she created, noting which areas were suitable for farming, shelter, and future settlement. Mira knew that if she succeeded, she could create the foundation for a new civilization. One morning, Mira discovered a small grove of trees near the river. Their roots were deep and strong, and the soil around them was rich. She decided this would be the perfect place to plant her next crops. With the guidance of the machines, she prepared the land, planting seeds in rows and watering them carefully. The machines assisted silently, their lights pulsing in patterns that seemed almost like encouragement. Mira smiled, feeling a deep connection to these guardians of the past. Weeks passed. Mira's crops grew steadily, the valley slowly transforming from barren ruins to a landscape of green and life. Birds sang, insects buzzed, and the air felt fresher with each passing day. Mira realized that she had become part of the natural rhythm of the world. She was no longer just an observer. She was a participant, a caretaker, and a guardian of life. One evening, as Mira sat on a hill overlooking the valley, she noticed something extraordinary. Tiny shoots of plants were sprouting in areas she had not planted. The machines had scattered seeds, nurturing the land on their own. Mira understood that the world itself was responding to care and attention. Life, once dormant, was returning because she and the machines were tending to it. Mira felt a deep sense of responsibility. She was not merely rebuilding, she was shaping the future. She understood that the mistakes of the past had led to humanity's downfall, but now she had the chance to guide life with wisdom and care. Every action mattered. Every seed planted, every drop of water purified, every structure built could determine the success of this new beginning. As the weeks turned into months, Mira continued to expand her work. She built stronger shelters, created irrigation systems for her crops, and improved her methods of purification and soil care. She even began to experiment with planting trees to restore forests. The valley was slowly changing, becoming a place where life could flourish once more. One morning, Mira discovered small tracks in the dirt. She followed them and found evidence of small animals returning, rabbits, squirrels, and birds exploring the valley. Mira felt joy unlike anything she had known. Life was returning not because of luck, but because of care, planning, and patience. She understood that this was the true meaning of survival, not merely existing, but nurturing and preserving life for the future. By the time the sun set that evening, Mira had planted new crops, repaired broken structures, and observed the valley thriving with growing life. She stood on a hill, watching the glowing machines move steadily across the land. She whispered to herself, "I will not fail. I will care for this world and life will return." The night was calm and peaceful. Mira lay under the stars, listening to the soft hum of the machines. She felt a sense of accomplishment and purpose. Though humanity had vanished, its spirit could live on through her actions, through the careful stewardship of the land, and through the guidance of the machines. She realized that even from the dust of history, a new beginning was possible. Mira dreamed that night of the future she could create. She imagined rivers flowing clean, forests full of life, and communities of humans returning to the world they had once lost. She dreamed of children laughing, families working together, and a world in balance with nature. She woke with renewed determination, ready to continue her work, knowing that every day mattered. Months passed, and Mira's efforts transformed the valley. Crops grew tall, water ran clean, and the valley became a sanctuary of life. Birds nested, small animals returned, and the air was filled with the sounds of nature. Mira worked tirelessly, tending to every detail, learning from the machines and planning for a future where life could thrive again. One morning, Mira stood on a hill overlooking the valley. The sun rose golden and warm, reflecting off the growing greenery. She smiled, feeling the weight of responsibility and the joy of accomplishment. She whispered to herself, "This is only the beginning. Life will continue, and I will guide it." The machines hummed softly around her, their lights pulsing in quiet rhythm. They had preserved the past, guided her in the present, and prepared the way for a future filled with life. Mira understood that she was not alone. She had allies, knowledge, and the wisdom of both humanity and the machines. Together, they could ensure that the world would never again fall into silence. Mira took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the sun, the freshness of the air, and the quiet harmony of the valley. She had begun rebuilding, and the future was full of possibilities. From the dust of history, life was returning, and Mira, the last human, would be its guardian, its teacher, and its guide. The dawn of a new beginning had arrived. Humanity's story, though paused, was not finished. Through Mira's actions, the memories of the past, and the guidance of the machines, life would flourish once more. And in the quiet, growing world, hope and determination shone brighter than ever.